Hi again, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to China Manufacturing Decoded. Adrian from the Sofeast team here, joined by Renaud, our CEO. Hi, Renaud.
Hey, hi, Adrian, and hi to all the listeners.
Renaud, you've been off around the world recently, and you finally arrived in France, right?
Yeah, correct. I'm going to be here for the next few weeks, yes. Couple of weeks, a bit more than that, in India, and then traveling around in Europe to see various other companies, and took a bit of time off, not too much, basically long weekends, and finally get back down in a place where I can catch up on everything.
Well, there's worse places to be than France in the summer, I'm sure.
Yeah, correct. Yes, it's just at the end of June, just before the tourists arrive and everything, so still okay. Let's see.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned India. If anybody listening is interested in India, we created so much content about India in June, specifically June 2022, and put a bunch of really cool videos that you shot in some of the different factories onto our YouTube channel as well. So I loved that. I loved seeing the different suppliers and what's actually capable in India at the moment.
Right. Yeah, because people don't have any clue. Most people think India is for, I don't know, t-shirts and arts and crafts.
Yeah.
and it's much more than that. And yes, they make a lot of hardware stuff. It's not just software. It's a big country with a lot of capabilities, and as a lot of companies are looking for alternatives to China, and we discussed this with Andrew Hubbard.
Yes.
When was that? 4 or 5 episodes ago, I guess.
Yeah, start of June, I think.
Yeah, if you are going to be selling products onto the US markets, it may become tougher and tougher to have these products made in China, right? So everybody's looking at places like Vietnam and Mexico, and they're getting very, very full because their production capacity is so much smaller than that of China, and there's so much production that goes into North America, UK, and other countries that might become, might get in a very bad relationship with China. Yeah. So they're very full, and they're getting even more full. So the idea is, let's have a look at India, because actually there's been a lot of things have changed recently in India, and a lot of production is actually going from China into India, but it's a lot of large companies relocating productions there. But what about SMEs? Can they also do that? What can they find there? Right. So that was really the object of the trip.
Yeah, fascinating to see sort of how feasible it was. And it's sort of like, okay, I want to diversify away from China. Vietnam and Mexico, potentially quite small ponds to fish in. Where's a huge neighbor in India where they've got, vast workforce in Asia, yeah. And the answer is India, of course, which is just sort of around the corner. So, really interesting to see that. I enjoyed those videos and all the content about India. So that's one to look out for, guys. Now, this episode 114, as we close in, by the way, rapidly on 20,000 downloads. Can you believe?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about how to reduce unauthorized subcontracting. And this, I think, is perhaps quite specific to China in many cases, but not exclusively.
No, of course not.
Right. But so we're going to talk about what subcontracting is, or specifically unauthorized subcontracting, the sort of problems it causes you when it happens, and the sort of things that we can do to reduce the risks of it happening. So our assembly supplier is actually doing this. So how do we reduce that risk? So to start, Renaud, what is subcontracting, please?
Well, subcontracting is normal to an extent. No factory makes everything, right? So when they let's say they're going to cut and sew a garment, they're not going to make the yarn. They're not going to dye the yarn and everything. Usually they will get that from outside. Fabric rolls. They will also get all the sliders, the rings, all the packaging accessories and so on from outside. And then their job is to cut the fabric, prepare the accessories, do all the stitchings and so on. And there are certain steps that are commonly done outside, right? Such as, I don't know, they're making a pair of jeans, and it has to be sent to an outside facility for that special finishing, blasting effect. So it looks like the jeans have been worn already and so on. I mean, usually this is done outside, and all the buyers expect that, and it's normal, right? To take this example with garments. And same thing if they make, I don't know, a mobile phone, is all the display is going to be done in-house, and all the metal parts, all the plastic parts, all the electronic parts and so on. Of course not. A lot of that has to come from outside, right? And same thing for a car. I mean, 80% of the price of a car, if you remove retail, of course, the distribution, but 80% of the price of the car, or even more, is the components that come from outside. So it's normal to do certain things outside. Now, the problem is that sometimes it is, how to say, is the assembly or the cut and sew or whatever, the critical manufacturing steps that the buyer expects factory ABC to do because they have qualified factory ABC. But factory ABC finds that for whatever reason, it's better to have it done in factory XYZ, or maybe half of it in factory XYZ, and they don't tell the buyer. And the buyer never hears about factory XYZ. They expect ABC to do everything, right? That is unauthorized subcontracting, and that is a very big problem. At a number of levels, as we'll see.
Yeah,
it's not just in China, but as we mentioned many times here on this podcast, the problem with China is that it's a relatively opaque environment. Very often, the suppliers don't want you to know everything that's going on, and it's just very tempting to them to subcontract, from ABC to XYZ, as I said, without telling the buyer. Is just sort of natural to them. They don't even see the harm in that, right? And obviously, the same thing happens, in Vietnam. I mean, also in non-Chinese owned Vietnamese factories. That's what I mean. In Bangladesh, there's been some very serious issues in Bangladesh with Walmart Canada having their garments made by through an importer. It was supposed to be made in a certain factory that had been qualified, that passed the social audits and so on. And actually, another factory burned that never heard of. And their products, labels and their brand was found in that factory that had burned, and some people had died, And they said, what's going on? How come our production was over there? And the importer was like, I didn't even know that it was made over there. Right, that was in Bangladesh. So it's happening in a lot of places, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned social audits, and it's a very serious cause of concern for brands and retailers that tend to do a lot of social audits. They tend to be very, very particular about who makes their products. And one of the things that happens is that maybe a manufacturer has 2 or 3 facilities. They will have one that is sort of the official factory. And it might be pretty small, actually, right? It might make only 10% of what they make. But it's clean, it's got everything according to the rules. It's got the staff who knows how to respond to the auditors. It doesn't really do too many hours and so on. And then 90% of the rest of the production is done in other places, maybe in their own factories, and maybe it's just the building next door, right? But it's different address, different place. The auditors don't go there.
Mm.
And then the auditors come in and they okay, everything is fine, and sort of with a wink and a handshake, and okay, well, it's fine, you pass. And I don't really want to know if there's a lot of bribery involved in that. But in a lot of cases, social auditors don't even need to lie in their reporting. The place that I just audited is okay,
mm-hmm.
and that's it. And in a lot of cases, it's okay, it passes. Now some companies are smarter than that. If you want to pull that off with IKEA, good luck. They collect so much data about you. They kind of know everything about you if you're qualified, and you can't really cheat, right? Mm. If you want to work with them, you have to do the hard work. But 98% of the companies, including the largest companies, the largest retailers, they're not at that level. They know very little actually about their supply chain. So there's a lot of games like this where it's supposed to be made here, but it's not really made here, and that's a problem.
Mm. Yeah, as soon as you say the words and they don't tell the buyer for any particular topic that we're talking about on the podcast, and it's many, I know immediately that's a big problem. And one of the major things that we talk about and stand for at Sofeast is transparency in the supply chain. And This is the absolute opposite of that. This is your supply chain is built on a lie, not necessarily intentionally by you, but because you don't know where things are being made at all or who's making them. So you don't have control over your supply chain. You don't know if your products are compliant. In theory, they aren't, because they've not been assessed.
Well, let's go through the list of issues. I agree with you.
Okay.
The products might not be compliant for a few reasons. First, maybe they have been certified, maybe a UL certified or something like this, to a standard that applies not only to the product, but also to the manufacturing facility.
Yeah.
The manufacturing facility is actually, and CE in many cases is the same. Like if you make medical devices, you have to make that same medical device with no changes in design, materials, or anything in the same manufacturing facility, and even I would say on the same equipment nearly with the same people. It's nearly down to that level of detail. And if production actually happens somewhere else, well, that's a huge problem, right? You're actually out of compliance, right? Quality usually suffers greatly because in most cases, what happens? In most cases, there's a manufacturing facility that is qualified and they intend to do the job there. Okay, let's give the benefit of the doubt and everything, But then they have peaks and valleys in their workload, right? They have a busy season and a not very busy season. So if you, as the buyer, you place orders in the season when they're not very busy, they will tend to do it in-house because anyway, they need to keep their staff busy and they have all the facility and all that stuff anyway. They're going to do it in-house usually. However, if you place some orders when they're very, very busy, maybe they've already committed their capacity for the next 3 or 4 months, right? And maybe also their number one biggest customer expects them to make, so much stuff and ship it out in 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, that are, a number of containers. Well, are they going to tell you, hey, sorry, now the lead time actually is 5 months, right? Or are they going to say, yeah, okay, fine. And as usual, send a deposit and blah, blah, blah. usually they will tend to say, yes, okay, go ahead, right? It's fine, we'll do it. And then they'll be thinking, okay, where can we have it made? And then they will find another place where they can have the materials, the components delivered, and say, okay, this is how you make it. This is an approved sample, and send it back to us, and we'll pack it together, right? Now, when they pick that other place, again, ABC picking XYZ, where production actually is going to take place, are they going to pick a really nice factory? Well, the really nice factory, number one, might be expensive, and number two, might be very busy too. Because when it's peak season in an industry, usually it's peak season for everybody. If you look at, garment production in Vietnam right now, they're all busy. If you look at toy production right now in June, in China or in Vietnam, they're all busy, right? And the best ones are the ones, that tend to get the orders first. So no, it's going to be a sort of a crappy factory, usually a very small place that doesn't have regular customers yet, or for whatever reason is not very busy. And they're going to be cheap, right? So the manufacturer ABC sort of acts as a trading company and makes a little bit of margin on it. And everybody should be happy, right? Well, maybe not, maybe because the customer might not be very happy about the standard of the products that they receive. Usually, when we see undisclosed subcontracting, we also see a quality disaster, right? Because you have a factory, the cheap and crappy factory that doesn't have the education, doesn't have the level, the standard, is not used to maybe making the products at your standard. They're probably not getting a lot of training and follow-up from the ABC manufacturer that is extremely busy. And they're not getting paid much. They're just putting stuff together and shipping it back to ABC. That's what's happening. And then where is quality control happening? Again, remember, ABC is very busy. All of their quality control staff also is very busy, right? So you can see quality usually suffers greatly. You don't see your supply chain. You don't have visibility over what happens. That's, as you already mentioned, your intellectual property is, is out there.
Oh yeah.
You have an XYZ manufacturer that you don't even know about putting your products together. Well, what prevents them 3 months from now from, making some more of it and selling it through the back door somewhere?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely nothing.
Right, because they're not tied to anybody. They're not tied to you. And in China, ABC and XYZ will usually not have a contract or anything.
They might be cousins.
Oh, they might be cousins, which actually might, make it more likely that they will steal intellectual property because their cousin will not, harm the harmony in the family over that, right? So it's actually worse. Or they might not even know each other. It might be a one-off transactional activity. I don't know which one is worse, actually.
Yeah.
Right. So, all kinds of issues. Yeah. And obviously, quality issues, can also be reliability issues, can also be safety issues. So, ouch. That's it can be quite painful for buyers. Now, I should also mention the ban in the US on products made in a certain western province of China, about which there's a lot of controversy. If a company that imports products into the United States is requested by the US Customs and Border Protection Office to provide evidence about where their products were made, if they have not visited the place during production, if they don't really have hard evidence, they might get in trouble. who knows where these products have actually been made. If they don't have hard evidence about that, they might get into a sea of trouble. Their containers might just get blocked, and they might face all kinds of issues in the US. Now it's very new. We don't know all the potential impacts of that, but having visibility over the supply chain can really save your ass. Can really prevent you from falling into a lot of these troubles.
Well, and this is connected to the whole, one of the reasons why, especially American companies are trying to diversify out of China, because there are additional risks like this. Because it's not only that province, right? I suppose it's a bit of a no-brainer that avoiding manufacturing within that particular Western province is probably necessary for American importers. But it's even staff at factories anywhere in China from that province means that the whole thing could be deemed completely not acceptable and won't be allowed to be sold in America. I don't even know if you would get into hot water by even trying to import it. I'm not entirely sure on the law on it, so if you don't know which factory is making your products, and then it does turn out after an investigation that at an unauthorized subcontractor, they had people from that province working there, completely unbeknownst to you, you're still carrying the can.
Oh yeah. So again, all of this is highly speculative. But if you read the text, it's pretty clear that there is a ban. It is forbidden, and it's a very serious offense to try to import products made by people, who might be forced to work. The transparency into the supply chain is getting more and more important at many levels.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Also in the EU as well, because of the sustainable products regulation that you spoke about with Clive recently. Again, supply chain transparency, a massive issue there for the product passport, amongst other points in that regulation. So yeah, all of this makes sense. And those are some serious problems that could be caused by something as simple as your supplier is busy and so thinks, I need a bit of help to fulfill this order, so I'm going to just farm it out. It sounds so simple, but it could cause loads of trouble. So with that in mind, then, how do we reduce those risks?
Well, there's a number of things that you can do as a buyer. Number one, of course, you need to know who you're working with. You need to collect some data, right? And as I mentioned, when are they most busy? When are they less busy? Because you know that your orders in the peak seasons of the factory will be, let's say, will come with higher risks. What is their capacity? And so what happens is, and we see that sometimes with some big orders, for example, some orders from Walmart, and this has been said over and over the years, and I'm not sure they really improved on that. But what happens is that they will say, okay, first, subcontracting is absolutely forbidden. When they buy through an importer, they buy through an intermediary. The intermediary has to collect some information about the factory, and also there's audits and so on, right? And they will say, okay, there's whatever, this is the quantity, and it's going to be made, and then the factory says, okay, yeah, we can do that if we, with like 2 months, if we can keep working on it for 2 months, it's going to be fine. But then there's some approvals, the right fabrics, the right color, the right everything, and things get delayed on the approval side, but the shipment date doesn't get delayed. So in the end, the factory maybe only has 6 weeks to do what they were supposed to do in 2 months. And then what do? Do they refuse the order, or do they find ways to, to get more production done in various ways, of course they will tend to get more to get production done in other ways. So, maybe they will make 80% of the production themselves, and they will have 20% made somewhere else. They will send some materials by truck at night and get some others, but the finished products back in other trucks at night, and it's very hard for anybody to really see what's going on. And they will keep the waters very murky when there's inspectors doing inspections. The production status will not be clear, and so on and so forth. I mean, this is just so common, right? So you need to know the capacity, and you need to have a plan. You need to have a plan for, okay, how many lines are going to work on this? How many pieces per day? Right? Does it match or does it not match? Okay, and this has to be done early. When you're sourcing the supplier, the manufacturer, and it has to be checked during the audit, right? Okay, what is the bottleneck? Process step, okay, is this one or this one? Okay, what is the real capacity? Let's actually observe. Is it the same kind of product that we are going to have them made, right? So know what is possible, what is realistic. Then plan for it, and look at the ways the factory actually plans. A lot of factories don't have a proper planning system. Right, material control, production control. They usually don't have these modules of the ERP actually in use, and that's fine. But do they actually have some kind of Excel file with a nice model where all the data are fed, and that really takes into account all of the steps and all the typical lead times and so on and so forth, and all the standard times, in a very detailed manner or not? And yes, this will take a full-time position, of course. A planner is extremely important. It's a lot of work, right? But if they do not do that, well, there's several problems. First, whenever they will tell you, yeah, okay, we can get it done by, August 20, it's a rough forecast. Okay, it's usually not based on data, because you have to take into account that they have to calculate everything with your orders plus all the other orders of the other customers. So it gets a little bit complicated if they don't have a proper production planning system. And also, if they don't have such a system, when you come in during production to check what they're actually doing, what the real production status is, and to see what they've done, and to sort of double check, do a reality check. Is this actually all made in-house? Can I actually see it with my eyes? You will not be able to do that, or it's going to be very hard. But if they have a good planning system, and they collect the data every day about what they've done, and they refresh it, you can actually double check relatively easily. Okay, so sometimes on purpose, they will not show you a production planning system. And that should be at least an orange flag, an amber flag, maybe not a red flag, but then you need to see, okay, how are they actually keeping track of their production? Do they have at least whiteboards at the end of the lines and whiteboards on each of the major, fabrication processes maybe, where they actually write maybe hour by hour, or maybe at the end of the shift, how many pieces were made versus how many were planned, right? If they don't even do that, how can you keep track of what's happening in production if it's a large order? It's very, very hard. Now, if they're going to make 1,000 widgets, you can actually go in and count. But if they're going to make 500,000 pieces, there's no way. You have to check the data that they themselves collect, right? Does that make sense? Or
Yeah, of course, because of the scale. No, I understand.
mm-hmm. And of course, if capacity is not sufficient, sometimes an engineer looking at that for 1 or 2 days can sometimes find ways to increase the output by 20% or more. It's quite surprising sometimes. So if you feel that their process engineering skills are weak, you might want to send consultants in there to take a look at it and to find ways to free more capacity. I mean, there was a case I remember a while ago, maybe 10 years ago, in a cable factory, and the GM told me about that. Right, I was not really involved in that, but it's the most obvious example that I can remember. Their bottleneck was a molding operation. They have these small injection molding presses, and that was the bottleneck. And then you could see the operator loading it. Putting the cable inside the fixture, then placing the fixture right as needed inside the equipment, and then pop, the cycle time started, and then she would take the stuff out and pull the cable out of the fixture, and then pull the next cable inside the fixture. And then someone smart said, wait a minute, if she has a second set of fixture, when she's waiting for, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds, because the injection molding machine is on, nothing can be done. Well, she already loads the next cable into the fixture, right? And then this doubled the capacity at the bottleneck, so it raised the capacity of every one of the lines by, I don't know, 30 or 40%. It was just, sometimes it sounds so simple, right? But sometimes it really is that simple. So have a good look at what's holding capacity back, because in some cases you can really have pretty big surprises. So that's about the factory's planning systems and their capacity and so on. Mm-hmm. It's also good to have a manufacturing agreement with the supplier saying that actually if they subcontract, it's not allowed. And if bad things happen, they will be responsible for all of that.
Yeah.
And it's still shocking that in 2022, a lot of buyers don't have contracts with their manufacturers because they still think that, hey, China is sort of the Wild West or Wild East, and contracts are useless and so on. But it actually does bring a lot of good things, right? If you have an agreement, legally enforceable agreement that says it's not allowed, black on white, the factory commits not to do it, and you have legal recourse, and you can pressure them, and you have more leverage if things really go wrong. It's something that I always suggest people to do, and they can Google, OEM agreement, manufacturing agreement with Chinese suppliers. There's a lot of things out there on the internet.
They can check the show notes as well, because I will add our own content about that topic. I mean, you've written on that loads of times. Yeah,
right. And in that content, we have links to maybe more authoritative content written by lawyers.
Absolutely.
Then let's say you've done all of that preparation work. You have the big order. You are afraid they're going to subcontract. Well, maybe give the supplier a pre-order, as soon as you can. It's going to be this quantity, it's going to be this type of product. You're going to have that many days, these are going to be the dates. Let them plan it and comment on it, right? Because if you just say, okay, here's the order, and then maybe the situation has changed since last time you talked about it to them, and they're like, oh, either we say yes and we find ways to do it, or we say, wait a minute, and then everything can fall, can be canceled. Okay, let's not say anything. Let's take it. No, try to have a dialogue. right? And then if they say, well, maybe, it's too much or whatever, okay, then maybe you have a way to work with another manufacturer and qualify them. Or maybe they will say, well, we would like to put it in that factory, but here's our concern. We don't want you to go direct to that factory, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's sign a contract, non-circumvention of the supplier. It's possible. Yeah. The buyer can commit not to put any production in that other factory and can commit to, using the factory, their direct supplier, let's say ABC, as a trading company for XYZ that will make 25% of the products. And a lot of things can be discussed this way, but it's really amazing how seldom this happens. This just doesn't even get on the table, right? So try to create this sort of dialogue, try to get the supplier to open up. And then, try to get an idea about their plan. What are the main milestones and when are they going to be achieved, roughly? Okay, but get them to commit to a date and then have, one of your representatives or an inspection company like ours go in from time to time, or if it's really a very big order, maybe every day, to check the real production status and also check quality of components and quality of production and quality of finished products at the same time, right? And if you have some suspicions, or if you really want to show maybe your own customer that you're doing everything you can, it's okay to set up some unannounced audits, as long as in your manufacturing agreement, it's mentioned that you can do it. And maybe it's mentioned that you can only do it on very big orders or certain, with some restrictions like this. But try to get the approval from your supplier that you can send some people unannounced, who will turn up at the factory gate at 9 a.m. Hey, I'm coming from this company. This is the contract. This is everything, and this is the contact person. And please let me come in. And if you have a question, you call my manager. But you can just let me wait at the gate, right? And then that person will walk in the warehouse and see what's there and see in production what's there. And if according to the plan, they were supposed to have 3 lines working on your products, but actually there's only 1 line working on your products, then the alarm bells should ring, right? And if a lot of the material is, doesn't seem to be at the factory, again, the alarm bells should ring. And do it once or twice, and the manufacturer will be much more careful, let's say it this way.
Yeah, they'll know you're serious. And not being in China at the moment, obviously we all know access to China is difficult, but it doesn't mean this can't happen. And you can still get all of this information in real time, can't you?
Yes. So there's a number of companies like ours and others that can do that job on the ground. Now, I should also mention that sometimes the manufacturers are not very cooperative, and it does help a lot when someone actually working at the buying company, for the importer comes in. So there has to be, maybe some outside inspection people coming in, but then they can really push for certain things. But then sometimes it's also a good mix to have someone from the buyer themselves come in with all of their authority, being the buyer, and saying, well, this is not good. Where's the GM? I want to talk to him. And you get to change that. I don't want to see that tomorrow, because sometimes it's really necessary. So a mix is really a good thing. And the problem these days in closed countries like China, and really China is the last big country to be that closed, unfortunately. But in a country like China these days, that can be a challenge. So, and suppliers tend to be less cooperative because they know that nobody from the buyer is going to come to their door tomorrow. It's just going to be WeChat calls and Zoom calls and emails, and they can delay things, they can make things a bit more difficult. They are using it quite a bit, I have to say, and it's a bit painful. So that's the caveat.
Okay, those are great, and I think it's quite interesting how you can take sort of legal action in terms of having an agreement, but you can also put efforts into analyzing how the supplier is working and their processes, and maybe optimizing them ahead of time to make sure that they don't have the need to subcontract. That's interesting to me. So, that's a good couple of different kinds of advice there. That's helpful.
Yeah, really, you don't want to put them in a position where they have no choice but subcontracts.
Yeah.
If you do that, it's your mistake. You're responsible for it. Now, if you do everything you can to make sure that they can do the job without subcontracting, and then they subcontract, you should be able to catch them, and they should feel the heat, right? I think that makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Regarding access to China, and this is a slight tangent but related, as of, I think, in the last day or two, and we're recording this at the very end of June, they've just reduced the quarantine from between 2 weeks to 3 weeks in a hotel, as you're well aware, and down to 7 days plus 3 at home.
Yeah, it was, in some cities, it was up to 4 weeks.
Yeah,
actually.
That's crazy.
And now they say, basically 10 days. If you live there, 7 days in a hotel, 3 days in your place. And it seems like it's going to be in a government facility, not in a hotel now.
Centralized quarantine facility.
Right.
I don't know what that means. It doesn't sound very appetizing.
I know what it's going to look like. Yeah, jail. But anyway, let's see how it goes, because things are announced. But at the same time, they published something saying that the current state of affairs in terms of restrictions for traveling and so on would last for 5 more years. And then they pulled it out. I don't know if you saw that article.
Yes, I did. What did they say? 2027?
5 more years. So, wow.
So what I'm talking, and I think they're planning to get rid of the PU letter. So that was basically a letter that you need to get, giving you permission to even apply for a visa.
Yeah, so for working visa only. Correct. It was for working visas only, and things even more difficult.
Yeah. So they've now gotten rid of that for working visas, and also for relative visas. So for spouses. So if you're a business visitor and you're thinking, well, this doesn't apply to me yet. No, probably not. But things are kind of changing. So I think they're trying to evolve what's going on.
Yeah. Let's see. That's what I always say. Some people are going to jump on this, and they're going to tell us, how it works. And then we'll know a lot more. Yeah. But sometimes they go in a certain direction and then they kind of freeze, or they actually, maybe Beijing says something and then the cities want to do it in another way. You know how China is.
Absolutely.
And it's encouraging. Things seem to be going in the right direction, seem to be opening up.
Yeah.
But they could go back on it in another way.
Well, let's hope.
Right?
Let's hope not. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, fingers crossed. Anyway.
Right. Yes.
Great. Okay. So there you have it. That was unauthorized subcontracting and how to avoid it, or how to reduce the risks of it, at least. So really good. Thanks, Renaud.
Hey, thanks, Adrian. Yeah, that was a good one. Thanks.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast, brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com. That's SOFEAST.com.
to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share because it will really help others discover us too.